Hi, so just letting you know what you're about to watch, this is going to be 5 videos that were originally intended to be posted on their own, but I think some people were getting kind of annoyed with it sort of flooding their feed with so many different videos, which I understand. So in hindsight, I probably should have clumped them together already, clumping them together now. So we're just going to go with groups of 5 of the top 10. So if you notice any weird editing from video to video, that's mostly going to be the reason why, so just be on the lookout for that. But anyways, let's get into the next 5 on this list. At 65 on this list, I am going with Pro Football Focus's highest graded guard last year, Joel Bitonio. You look at his PFF page, he's always been good, but last year was the first year we saw him play elite with a 93.6 Pro Football Focus grade and his run block grade a 92.5 grade. And again, even the consistency is great. So even if you want to say, I don't know if he's the 2021 guy, if he's someone who's consistently putting up an 80 to 85 grade, according to PFF, that's a very good player. That's someone who has a ton of value. And with the upside, that's why I have him kind of ahead of some of these other, we've had a sort of a run on interior offensive linemen with these past few picks. That's why I have him sort of at the top of, some of those guys. A play like this is exactly what he can do well. So he is 75. He is the left guard on this play. And you see what's going to happen. So there are 2 offensive linemen lined up towards the left, 2 Chicago Bears players who could potentially come over and make a play. How would you expect them to block? Well, it would be pretty obvious, right? The, guy on the left blocks the guy on the left. The guy closer to the right blocks the guy closer to the right. Pretty simple. But the Bears players are going to do that. They're going to twist around, which basically means that for Cleveland, it can fool you, and this kind of stuff can surprise you. Look at how right when this play begins, definitely at the last second, it was really well executed by Chicago. You now have to figure something out, because there's a player who's going to try and run in between Bitonio and the center treader. So what do you do here if you're Bitonio? Well, watch him push off that Chicago player, and then he gets over to block the 94, which gave Mayfield time to be able to figure something out. He scrambled and picked up a good amount of yards. That's a good play when you're under fire to be able to pull off something like that. That is very fantastic in my opinion, and part of what makes him so good. If you want to talk about consistency, it doesn't get much more consistent than Mr. 1,000 yards receiving himself, number 64 on this list, Mike Evans. You look at his box score statistics, and of course what everyone talks about with Mike Evans, the only player to, through 8 seasons in his career, get at least 1,000 yards in each season, which is just as much a testament to how good he is as it is a testament to just how he's been able to stay relatively healthy and stay on the field. While his yardage totals have been a bit down these past 2 years, just barely clearing that 1,000-yard mark each year, the touchdowns have been way up. 13 touchdowns in 2020, 14 in 2021, as he has quickly become one of Tom Brady's favorite red zone threats ever. You look at Mike Evans' Pro Football Focus page, and this is where you might see why he is not higher than 64 on the list, because the past 2 years he's been, according to them, kind of a fringe top 32 wide receiver in football, although in previous years he had been dominant. So has he taken a step back? I think it's probably fair to say that the Brady system sort of doesn't necessarily fit his strengths the same way the Jameis Winston, F it and chuck it system did, but he's still been very effective, and I would still say is a very good player. For the play to show, let's talk about what ended up being his last touchdown of the season, what we thought might have been Tom Brady's last touchdown he threw in his career, going to be against Jalen Ramsey, and there's more to it than just a pure one-on-one matchup, but to simplify things, from Evans' perspective, it's essentially going to be him going up against Jalen Ramsey. Look at how right when this play begins, you kind of see how I feel like what Evans does so well is these little subtle things he'll do in his route just to help set things up. Like right here, how he's kind of faking as though he's running an out route just a little bit, just enough to freeze Ramsey a little bit, which can allow him to blow by Ramsey. Watch as he continues this route, he does get by Jalen Ramsey. It's a beautifully thrown ball by Brady, and Evans is able to get into the end zone for a touchdown. This is something Evans has done to a lot of great corners, and really, there's a reason why maybe sometimes his yardage totals aren't so impressive, and it's because he gets double teamed a lot. Teams know they can't let him be one-on-one even against a great corner without safety help. Even someone like Jalen Ramsey, who, spoiler alert, will show up later on this list, can get burned by him, and doing stuff like that even if Evans isn't getting yards, just the attention he gets always does so much for Tampa Bay, so that is why he makes the list here at 64. At number 63 on this list, we have Darren Waller, who I think has really shown himself to be a really great player these past several years. You look at his box score statistics in 2015, 16, and 18, he barely got on the field, didn't get on the field in 2019. Obviously, we know about his, his issues with, all that stuff. But once he's been on the field, he has been a consistent dominant threat, multiple 1,000-yard seasons, despite the fact that he does technically play tight end and has done a very good job last year as well. He didn't play every game, but when he did, he was just as dominant. You look at his Pro Football Focus grades, and I guess you do see a bit of a step back in 2021 in terms of the grades, but how much of that was, him not playing while fully healthy and all of that stuff, because the previous 2 years he was, the 5th highest graded tight end in football and the 3rd highest graded tight end in football. You see all the way over to the left the difference between his receiving grade and his run blocking grade. There is no denying he is not much of a blocker. I mean, that's just not what he's there for. He's there to catch, and for good reason. He can catch with the best of them. For example, something like this, where what's going to happen here is it's going to be man coverage, and I have circled Darren Waller on the screen. He is the one who I have circled in white. This is the concept that Las Vegas is going to be running, where the two wide receivers are going to run over the middle, and then Waller is going to he's eventually going to sort of go in that direction as well, but just a lot slower. And typically what you'll do is you'll sometimes have the tight end on this play just simply run a flat route, so run all the way toward the bottom of the screen. But essentially the purpose this concept is serving is it's getting Darren Waller in a one-on-one matchup, and that's what the Raiders want, as oftentimes he was viewed as their number one option. And watch how Waller is going to be able to do a great job at using his footwork to allow himself to get open, makes a good move to avoid a tackle, and gets into the end zone for a touchdown. This is really impressive stuff that Waller does consistently. I do think there are other players who have maybe done what Waller has done for a longer period of time. There's certainly tight ends who are better blockers than him, but he's so dominant in the receiving game, and he has been so dominant for these past 3 seasons that's why I decided to put him as high as I did on the list. I have A.J. Dillon coming in at number 62, which I'm sure some people will be surprised by, thinking this is a bit too high, but trust me, A.J. Dillon is a fantastic player. You look at his box score statistics, the box score statistics are very good, albeit in a small sample size. Just 233 yards, but a 4.5 yards per carry pace when he is, out there, and over 1,000 yards with 7 touchdowns. Again, the bulk stats aren't too impressive because 187 carries last year, that's a good amount. That certainly is a big enough sample size, in my opinion, to feel confident about him, but it still is a relatively small sample size, and that's why I couldn't put him any higher. But I mean, you look at his PFF grades, his PFF grades were fantastic. I mean, he had the 4th highest run grade in football and the 3rd highest overall grade among halfbacks in football. So he was dominant. An 86.2 grade is fantastic. And again, he played a decent amount of snaps. His snaps totals were not quite what the top guys got, but they were still pretty high. He got a decent amount of playing time. I think a play like this is exactly what he can do so effectively for the Green Bay Packers, where it's going to start off as though they're going to sort of fake as though they're running to the left side of the screen, but then run to the right side of the screen. And look at how A.J. Dillon has the acceleration to get through this gap, but also look at just the effort it takes all the Minnesota Vikings players to finally bring him down. So just kind of runs like that, it just seems difficult. He makes things difficult on defenses, and he's able to pick up several extra yards on seemingly every run. And I really do think that next year, I think there's a bigger chance that he ends up being even higher on this list as opposed to lower, as in closer to 1 on this list than closer to 100. Now, I couldn't put him any higher on this list simply because it still is a small sample size. We still don't know if this is truly who he is. Maybe he got lucky. There always is that comparison, that the worry, so could not put him any higher on this list. But the reason why I put him on this list is because I think he was incredibly dominant. And if he had played 3 seasons like he had just played last season, he's probably, I don't know, maybe he's in the top 20, maybe he's in the top 10. He was that good last year, so we'll see if he can continue it next year. But also, one thing I always mention with halfbacks is I care what have you done for me lately, and the fact that he doesn't have too much wear and tear on his body, that's something in his positive column, not something in his negative column. At number 61 on my list is a guy who many people might have in the top 10 on their list, and honestly, I could understand why. Justin Jefferson, does come in here at 61. You look at his box score statistics, he has over 3,000 yards in just 2 seasons as a pro. I mean, this is an unbelievable start, and as good of a start as we've ever seen in the NFL by any position. I mean, this is absolutely fantastic, certainly in terms of the box score statistics, 17 touchdowns as well. He has been a dominant force. If you look at his PFF grades are also dominant. The second best wide receiver in football according to PFF in 2020, and then the 4th best in 2021. It still is a small sample size. It's just 2 seasons. We have seen players with bigger sample sizes, and there's a lot of good wide receivers, which is the main reason why he's a bit lower on this list than it feels like he should be. But that's really the only negative thing I can say about him, because he does everything else so well and checks off so many boxes for the Minnesota Vikings. For example, something like this is the kind of stuff that I didn't see from him as a rookie. I think he has improved a lot from year 1 to year 2, even if the numbers are kind of similar. I think he's become a much more complete wide receiver. His first year, I felt like he was doing a great job in a specific system, but I was kind of wondering, okay, what if you put him in a different system? I think this year he proved, even though it was still a very similar system, he proved that he can do a lot of other things. I mean, watch this route and watch how he's going to fake it, so he's going to the inside, but when he gets to the outside, I mean, that's just, a nasty move to allow himself to get open and get that touchdown, and that's what he does consistently. He can win on the outside consistently. He's so great at those over the middle routes. That's definitely what he's known for, but he can do so much more than that, and the reality is he's a remarkable talent, and I would be surprised if I make this list next year and he's not higher than where he's at this year, simply because of how incredible of a start he's had to his career.